This is a Montie moment. I'm Johnny Montalbano. We get you ready for the Sweet 16 in the NCAA Tournament after first two rounds that had a little bit of everything. It had the teams that you expected to win and advance on to this upcoming weekend, like your Alabamas, like your Houstons. But it also did have your Cinderella stories, like 15 seed Princeton, who now is in the Sweet 16. You have another 15 seed in the Sweet 16 in the tournament. You did have maybe arguably the biggest upset in the history of the tournament as 16 seed FDU upset Purdue. Last week I said that Purdue was not going to make it through the weekend. Well, it turns out they didn't make it to the weekend. So Purdue advances. You did have, the West, which is just absolutely crazy. Kansas was going to have a tough time getting out of there, in my opinion, and they're not even going to make it to the Sweet 16 in that loaded Western region. So a little bit of everything as we get you set for a Sweet 16 that, like I said, has your top teams like your Alabamas and your Houstons, and it also does have your Cinderella stories like Princeton and FAU. And what the tournament also does not have starting the Sweet 16 this weekend are your blue bloods like Duke, like Kentucky, and Kansas, not in there. North Carolina, which didn't even make the tournament after making it to the championship game last season. So a little bit of some new blood in there. You have Alabama, Tennessee, Xavier, Florida Atlantic trying to make the Final Four for the first time in school history. We have a 15 seed in the Sweet 16 for the third straight year, as Princeton will face number 6 Creighton on Friday. And I got to tell you, that's my favorite matchup of the weekend. So we'll go through all these games real quick, give you some picks, and see what we can do. I mean, I had a couple of cool upsets. I did pick Furman over Virginia, and what a crazy finish that was on Thursday as well. So the tournament's had a little bit of everything here over the first couple of days. And now we're down to the Sweet 16. By the end of this weekend, and we get it to next week, we'll be down to the Final Four, and then we will have a championship game, and we'll have ourselves a national champion. It's amazing how quick this goes. That Thursday and Friday of the first round is the best. You 16 games each day, goes from basically 12 noon Eastern to almost 1 a.m. in the morning, almost nonstop. This is why this is the best tournament of anything, and hopefully it stays this way and they don't expand it, because, yeah, you want more. Yes, of course, but the way this is right now, this is the perfect length, in my opinion. 3 weeks of great action, and we'll see what we can do for you here in terms of as we look ahead and break down and preview these Sweet 16 matchups. And game number 1 starting on Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern at MSG. So how cool is it that the East region will be decided at the world's most famous arena, which now could be relevant in both pro and college basketball, with the news that Rick Pitino is going to become the new head coach over at St. John's. So that's a cool thing now. So St. John's can be very, very relevant again. And again, that'd be a cool thing if you have both pro and college basketball being very relevant at the world's most famous arena. But anyway, so Thursday night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, the East region, you have 7 seed Michigan State taking on 3rd seed Kansas State. And Michigan State, they were a very popular pick for a first-round upset, but Tom Izzo and the Spartans continue to march on, Sparty on, as they say, as they took down USC and then had a 9-point win against Marquette. They staved off multiple second-half runs by the Golden Eagles to get the win. Now, Michigan State did overcome some poor three-point shooting along the way, but they won the rebound battle, which is something that they have not really done this season, so that is a great thing to watch there. Kansas State comes in off a victory over Kentucky. So again, one of those blue blood schools that's not making it. Another early exit for John Calipari's squad. Turnovers, a big key to that game, as Kansas State forced 16 of them. But the Spartans are careful with the basketball. So with Michigan State better on offense, Kansas State better on defense, if Kansas State cannot repeat the turnover dominance and does not improve on the rebounding side, this is going to be another Elite 8 run for Tom Izzo's squad. And so it will so. So Sparty on for the Spartans, who are the lower seed in this one, but actually the favorites to win. So I will take Michigan State as the 7 over the 3, Kansas State in the East in game number 1 on Thursday. Game number 2 at 7:15 Eastern on CBS features the 8th seed Arkansas Razorbacks taking on the 4th seed UConn Huskies in that loaded West region over in Las Vegas. And UConn showing that they have all the ingredients to make a deep run in this tournament. The Huskies have been flexing on defense. They held Iona and St. Mary's to below 65 points in their 2 games. And then they're facing a Razorback squad that came back and knocked off the top seed Kansas winning the rebound and the turnover battle. So I'm expecting a low-scoring defensive affair with both teams having quality defense. So it's going to be kind of a lower-scoring one, I think, in this one. But UConn has shot better in this tournament, especially from three-point range, and three-pointers, as we've seen in basketball, always a big thing. And that's going to be the difference in this one. So give me the Huskies to take the win over Arkansas in this one in the 4-8 out there in that loaded West. Game number 3 on Thursday, back to Madison Square Garden we go, just after 9 Eastern for the second East matchup, as the other Cinderella team in this tournament, 9th-seeded Florida Atlantic, takes on the 4th-seeded Tennessee Volunteers. And Florida Atlantic started this with a 1-point win over Memphis, which I think was a big surprise in my opinion. I thought Memphis was one of the better teams with the lower seeded at the 8th spot. I thought they had a chance to make a very deep run, but give Florida Atlantic a lot of credit. Limited turnovers, keeping their high effective field goal percentage in the process, and I think that trend will continue against Fairleigh Dickinson, which is the best story in this tournament, as the Owls ended their improbable run. They take on a Tennessee squad that had been dealing with injuries and struggled down the stretch, but their defense has shined in their first 2 games. They held Duke to just 52 points on offense, which was the Blue Devils' lowest offensive output of the season. Made Duke look more like November and December Blue Devils squad than the recent team that got them to this point. But Florida Atlantic, you look at them, they rely on low turnovers, quality shooting, and rebounding. All things that Tennessee controlled, though, in their win against Duke. So unless a miracle happens, I don't think Florida Atlantic gets out of this one. And I'm not really that high on Tennessee. I had them out in the first round against Louisiana, and they made it very, very close. But I think the Cinderella story is going to end here. I'm going to take Tennessee to win and advance out of the East. The Thursday portion wraps up back in Vegas with 2 giants, Gonzaga and UCLA, which could and perhaps should be a Final Four matchup. Gonzaga's been amazing all year on offense. There's been no doubt about that, scoring just under 88 points per game, leading the nation by 2 points per game. They were only held below 75 points 7 times this season, so they definitely do have the offense, and their trend of high-scoring games has continued in this tournament. They're coming off a 51-point second half in one of their games earlier, and that has made them earn a date with the UCLA Bruins, who I know were dealing with some injury problems going into this tournament, but the Bruins are currently the number 1 adjusted defensive efficiency team in the nation. They were 7th in defensive scoring per game at just over 60 points allowed per game, and their shutdown defense has continued in the first 2 games of this NCAA tournament. So this is the matchup of the top D against the top O. But the difference is that UCLA is not just defense. They can score, and that's going to be the difference in this one. So I'm going to take the Bruins out of the West to keep their tournament hopes alive. And that wraps up the Thursday slate. Now, Friday starts with the number 1 overall seed in this tournament. That is the Alabama Crimson Tide, and they will take on San Diego State, the 5 in the South region from Louisville, Kentucky. And the thing with this one, there's not really much to break down, in my opinion. San Diego State has not faced a top caliber team yet, and Alabama has just dominated so far. And that's even with Brandon Miller not even being on the scoreboard in their first game of the tournament. So there's really not much else that needs to be said. As I said last week when we did the round of 64 preview, I think Alabama's the best team in this tournament. They are the highest rated seed. I think they're going to make it to the Final Four, and I think they're going to even make it to the national championship. So roll Tide. They're going to continue their run here. Alabama, the 1 over San Diego State, the 5 in the South. In the Midwest from Kansas City, also a 1-5 matchup here as top seed Houston faces the 5 seed in Miami. Miami's been an offensive-focused team this entire season. They're ranking 25th in the nation in scoring. They held Drake to 56 points, one of their best defensive outings of the year. And yeah, their defensive unit did take a little bit of a step back against Indiana, giving up 69 points, but still outscoring them to get the win. Houston has shown off their defense so far. They allowed just 52 points in the first round and then 64 against Auburn, even though they had a rally in the second half against Auburn. But while their offense didn't really show up against Northern Kentucky, it did find their groove against Auburn. So they were able to smother them down the stretch, and that did give me a little bit more confidence in picking them going into this one. But one thing to watch here going into this matchup against Miami is in that Auburn game, their 2 best scoring options were in foul trouble. They did finish strong to get the win, but if foul trouble continues to plague Houston, I think the Hurricanes can pull this one out, and I've still not really been that high in Houston. I mean, I'm not trying to downplay what they've done this year. It's been great, but Miami's got the kind of team that if there's foul trouble and their offensive scoring can give Houston some trouble here. So look for that one to be a possibility. I am going to, at the end of the day, though, I'm going to take Houston, but I'm going to be very reluctant and hesitant to do so. But we will take the Cougars to at least make it to the Elite Eight and possibly the Final Four, which would be in Houston. So it would be a big home field advantage for the Cougars if they're able to get to that point. Like I mentioned in the Open, one of my favorite games in the Sweet 16 is the Cinderella story Princeton, the 15th seed taking on 6-seeded Creighton, who to me is a 6-seeded number only. You know, Princeton shut down a quality Arizona offense, did the same thing against Missouri. Both teams rated in the top 10 in adjusted offensive efficiency. And so really, Creighton, though, comes in almost under the radar considering who they're facing. They have a better defensive, but they face Princeton, who has a better defensive unit than what Baylor does. Creighton's shown the ability, though, to play both a shootout and a defensive game thus far in this tournament, and they may have to adjust again to end Princeton's run. But you know what? Princeton has shown that they could play with anyone, and you know what? Just like we saw with St. Peter's last year, the Cinderella story is going to continue. So give me 15-seeded Princeton over 6-seeded Creighton. Creighton, I think, is the one team in that region that could give top-seeded Alabama a trouble, but I don't think they're going to make it there. I think Princeton's going to end up facing Alabama, and then I think the Cinderella run is going to end in the Elite Eight. But you know what? Give me Princeton. Why not? Keep it going here. One of the best story in the tournament is going to roll on into the end of the weekend. And finally on Friday, a 2-versus-3 matchup as Xavier faces Texas. Xavier comes in 12th in the NCAA in scoring and has continued to show that firepower, putting up 84 against Pittsburgh. Now, remember, they struggled against Kennesaw State, and Kennesaw State had them in that first-round matchup. And then in the second part of the second half was really all Xavier, and that's what propelled them to get to this point. Slowing down Texas, though, is going to be a tall hill to climb, as the Longhorns, they are 11th in adjusted offensive efficiency, 41st overall in scoring. And Texas took care of business with ease against Colgate and then took out the 10th seed of Penn State. They showed off their defense against the Nittany Lions, forcing nine turnovers, winning the rebound battle. So I'm going to take the Longhorns to advance here. You know, they held Penn State under 42% shooting, and if they could hold Xavier, if they could slow them down, then I think the Longhorns are going to advance, and I think they will. So I'm going to take the Longhorns to win and advance out as well. So a Sweet 16 that's got top teams, it's got Cinderella stories. We'll get down to the Elite Eight over the weekend, and then next week when we're back on Game On Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, we will be down to our Final Four. And at the end of the day, though, I still think it's going to be Alabama coming out in the Final Four. I think Bama comes out of the South. I think Michigan State is going to come out of the East. Hesitant to say this. I think Houston, though, comes out of the Midwest, and I think UCLA has just enough to get out of that loaded West region and make it to the Final Four to start April. So, nevertheless, should be a very, very fascinating tournament as we come down the stretch of the NCAA season. For more, like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameOnETB. You can follow me on Twitter at MontalbanoNY and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. Leave us a like. If you're new, hit that subscribe button. And as always, have that notification bell set so you know when all of our content will be out there. And check out our website as well at etbpodcast.com. I'm Johnny Montalbano.